Watch right now in the Front News Project. Moscow was shaken, a high-profile elimination of a war criminal near the Russian capital. The battle for Crimea continues. Heavy strikes on Russian military targets. 950,000 Russian soldiers have fallen on Ukrainian soil. Alautinov wants new cannon fodder. Watch fiery, hot, and blazing footage from the front line right now. The fourth year of the full-scale war, a war that Vladimir Putin and his entourage unleashed on Ukrainian soil. The heroic resistance of the Ukrainian armed forces and the entire Ukrainian people in their fight for freedom continues. Greetings, this is Front News. This is Vladimir Timoshenko with you. For the next 30 minutes, you will find the truth about the war, which our journalists are uncovering from the hottest combat zones. Well, are you ready? Then let's begin. And we start right away with exclusive material, a high-profile elimination near Moscow. Deputy Chief of the Russian General Staff, General Yaroslav Moskalik, has been destroyed. Additionally, Ukrainian drones visited the airfields of Russian invaders in temporarily occupied Crimea. It was very loud there. Besides this, UAVs attacked the city of Shuya in the Ivanovo region again. The Ukrainian drones were once again intercepted by the enemy's 112th Brigade. It was also heated in Rostov-on-Don. Their resistance forces burned. A multi-purpose enemy fighter Su-30 SM. All the details in our report.
Another criminal down. In the Moscow region, the deputy chief of the main operational directorate of the Russian General Staff, General Yaroslav Moskalik, was eliminated. His car exploded. But not only Moskalik. In the Russian city of Bryansk, the car of Yevgeny Rytikov also exploded. He was involved in the modernization of electronic warfare systems. Meanwhile, it was loud once again in Russia. Strike drones raided airfields. In temporarily occupied Crimea, drones were spotted in Novofedorivka and Kacha. The attack lasted 5 hours. Incidentally, the city of Shuya was hit for the third time this month. Let us recall, the 112th Missile Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces was stationed here, which fired Iskander ballistic missiles at Somii on April 13th. According to Russian media, a fire broke out again at the 51st Grau Arsenal in the Vladimir region. In Russian Rostov-on-Don, a Su-30 SM multi-role fighter was destroyed. Ukrainian intelligence described the destruction of the military aircraft as another act of resistance against the regime of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. The approximate cost of the destroyed enemy aircraft is $50 million.
This is a significant blow to the capabilities of the Russian aerospace forces in terms of striking both military and primarily civilian infrastructure in Ukrainian cities. According to the Russian side's own assessment, this is already the 8th similar incident on the territory of the Russian Federation. This concerns the destruction of Russian aerospace forces ports. This indicates a low level of performance by the Russian Federation's special services in preventing such acts.
As reported by analysts from the Institute for the Study of War, in recent weeks, Russian forces have likely adapted their tactics and weaponry for long-range strikes on Ukraine to weaken Ukrainian air defenses and inflict more significant damage. Among the improved missiles is the North Korean KN-23, which the occupiers used to attack Ukraine on April 24th, while specifically targeting the city of Kyiv.
The Russian army has managed to increase their accuracy. If initially the error was from 500 to 1,500 meters, well, deviations from the target, now we can say that after structural changes, the enemy can more actively use the KN-23 for strikes on targets like residential areas with the aim of terrorizing and killing civilians. It should be noted that the warhead is about 500 kilograms. And the main thing is the flight time to the Ukrainian capital is no more than 2 minutes.
Not Ukraine alone. NATO fighters intercepted a Russian reconnaissance aircraft, IL-20, near Poland.
The Russian Federation is monitoring the territory of Poland. Poland is used as the main logistics hub with the United States and our European partners at the moment for military technical assistance to the defense forces of Ukraine. Therefore, I do not rule out that there is monitoring of Polish territory to obtain objective control data on the nature of military technical assistance to our country.
And now, an analysis of the operational situation on the Toretsk front. The Russian world is becoming more aggressive here as well. On the Toretsk front, the enemy attacked our troops' positions 8 times, in the Toretsk area and towards Delivka and Dakhnoye. 3 clashes are still ongoing. According to unofficial information, Ukraine has increased the production of its 155mm self-propelled artillery system Bodana 2S22 from 6 units per month in 2023 to 36. And it is precisely the Bodana that greatly assists our defenders, including on the Toretsk front. Military correspondent of the armed forces, Andriy Tsaplienko, will tell and show how exactly this is happening.
The domestic Bodana installation is currently stopping an infantry assault in Toretsk, and we need to have more of such weapons. And partners are here today, gone tomorrow, these guys say. We will be able to stand firm if we have our own. And it's hard to disagree with them. It's hard not to agree with them. It's hard not to agree with them. It's hard not to agree with them.
Fire!
The Bodana gun is compelling evidence that the production of complex combat systems in Ukraine can be made widespread.
I got assigned to this remarkable gun, got used to it, and we already know everything about it.
At the time of the invasion, there was only one prototype of the domestic 150mm installation.
Fire!
And over the past year, Ukraine has produced 154 guns for the military, and now it manufactures more than 20 Bodana guns per month. As of now, this is the highest rate of artillery production in Europe.
We need to produce both ammunition and weapons. As practice shows, partners may be here today and gone tomorrow, and we won't have anything to shoot with.
Although the Bodana is not as automated as its Western counterparts, here near Toretsk, the gun has proven to be a very accurate and long-range weapon.
Fire when ready, please. Fire! It's a tough direction. 20, 30, 40 shells per day are used. The Russians are just gaining momentum. It's summer now, and everything is just starting for them. The defense of Toretsk is the longest battle in the entire war with Russia, over 10 months, longer than Bakhmut. The 100th Brigade and other units currently hold about a fifth of the city.
There is no front line here. Ukrainian positions can be deep in enemy territory and vice versa. In Toretsk itself, the enemy has lost more than 15,000 soldiers. Thousands of bodies lie among the ruins of the city because no one retrieves them.
There are always many of them, too many. It feels like they never end and never will. But to say they have had any significant success, no. There is partial success, but I'll say this, Delis, if we lose a position, by a certain time of day, that position is destroyed, along with whatever entered it.
The Russians show no mercy. If they notice the Ukrainian armed forces taking prisoners, they try to eliminate them. Ukrainian artillery and drones cut off all the occupiers' roads, but the Russians do the same. Most of the attacks occur when entering and exiting Toretsk. The Toretsk direction remains one of the most intense in the region and is extremely challenging and demanding. Without Toretsk, the occupiers cannot encircle Kostiantynivka, the main logistics center of the Ukrainian defense. Fire! Therefore, there is a lot of work here for Ukrainian artillerymen. The commander of the American Paladin installation of the 100th Brigade is convinced that even in the era of drones, artillery has not lost its relevance, especially in Toretsk. Is artillery still relevant?
Yes? It remains relevant because it covers the infantry. Artillery is artillery. You can't do without it either. You can't quickly block or suppress an assault. That is, FPV strikes more precisely, but we can deliver a massive strike, completely covering a certain area.
"12 people died, 87 were injured. 24 of the injured are still in hospitals. Among the dead, we have 3 the children. These are the consequences of a terrible Russian missile attack on Kyiv. The most horrifying strike hit a high-rise building in the Sviatoshin-To district of the capital. A correspondent from SN, Sergei Morgun, visited the site of the bloody events. He saw with his own eyes how the dead and injured were pulled from the rubble. His report, filled with pain, follows.
When it exploded, the entire frame flew out here, broke through these doors with the blast wave, and then these doors were blown out too.
In this destroyed bedroom, Alexander says he experienced the impact. I saw the warning about the ballistic threat, but I didn't even have time to run into the corridor. Completely.
Injured by glass, he ran to save others. In the next room, he says, a child was sleeping, and he is sure it was a miracle that saved them. The entire window flew out and landed here. All the glass panes. Not a single scratch on her, thank God.
Altogether, he says, they ran into the corridor and managed to hide under the stairs. That's when the second explosion occurred. The impact was so strong that doors, windows, and walls collapsed in the surrounding houses. Nikolai woke up because he was pinned down by a window frame. Despite the visual chaos, he says, his apartment on the 5th floor suffered even less damage than those below.
We came out, our arms are intact, our legs are intact, but the 3rd floor was hit. There, they were helping to carry a man out on a carpet. That is, we brought him here, and there was already an ambulance.
But through tears, the locals say, not everyone was so lucky. One of the nearly 24 affected buildings was directly hit by a North Korean ballistic missile weighing a ton. 2/3 of the building simply collapsed.
Is anyone there?
Within minutes, the patrol police arrived at the scene to rescue those who survived.
I'll help you immediately. Now.
Just be quiet, Yanochka. Hold on, please, sweetheart.
Alexei talks about what happened to his childhood friend Alexander, who lived in this house.
He took the child and started to leave. Meanwhile, his wife continued to gather things. There was a powerful explosion, and they were buried under the debris.
Alexander covered the child with his body. Later, they were found under the rubble by neighbors. The wife died on the way to the hospital from multiple injuries. Alexander himself asked not to be shown. Just a year ago, he returned from Russian captivity. But the occupiers found him even in the capital.
The 1.5-year-old child's mother is gone.
For more than a day, rescuers were clearing the house debris. They say at least a dozen of its residents stopped making contact after the strike.
Under the rubble. With a high probability, unfortunately, there are still bodies of the deceased. Our rescuers are working. There might be living people as well. Next to the ruins, tearful relatives and friends have been waiting all this time. This woman was begging the police to find her daughter who hadn't been in contact. A group of teenagers was waiting for a friend who lived on the 1st floor. I don't know what's happened to him. Is he your friend? I sincerely hope that he is alive. Rescuers periodically stopped work and asked for silence around to hear those who survived under the slabs. Right in front of the journalists, a 29-year-old man was pulled out from under the rubble. He was there for 6 hours. Damn, you hold on. He responded to the rescuers' voices, and that's how we determined where he was under the rubble. And so, little by little, we located and extracted him.
Periodically, the police and psychologists approached those who were waiting. This meant only one thing: another deceased person was found under the rubble. Due to the Russian attack here in Sviatoshin, 12 people died and 87 were injured. 24 of the injured are still in the hospital. Among the deceased are 3 children. What hurts Alexander the most is that many of the injured have suffered from the war not for the first time. He says that in the damaged apartment, for example, lived his friends, displaced persons from Skadovsk, whom he was visiting. Previously, they fled from Russian aggression, but the occupiers reached them even in the capital. Whether they can return home is still unknown to most residents of the surrounding houses. An examination must determine whether they are safe and if they can be restored, or people will also have to start life from scratch.
And now it's time to move to the blazing Pokrovsky front line. The situation here is traditionally tense to the limit. On the Pokrovsky direction today, the enemy attacked the positions of our defenders 38 times in the areas of the settlements Malinivka, Lysivka, Kotline, Udachne, Novoserhiivka, Novoalexandrivka, Nadiivka, Troitske, Kotliarivka, Serebriane, Andriivka, and towards Stara Mikolaivka, Alexandropol, Novopavlivka, Bodanivka. 6 clashes are ongoing. Additionally, the settlements of Vladimirovka, Poltavka, Novaya Poltavka, Malinivka, Kazatske, Rodovka, Novoekonomichne, Myrnohrad, Lysivka, and Zaverevo were subjected to airstrikes. By the way, Russia itself has already lost, just to note, 945,000 soldiers on the front. Despite this, the war criminal Aladinov is urging Putin to call up another 1 million Russians to, so to speak, make up for the losses. And by the way, even Shoigu has woken up, who has started to scare the whole world with the threat of a third world war. Moreover, the Russian army has set a new goal for itself to reach the Dnipropetrovsk region by May 9th. This is reported by representatives of the armed forces of Ukraine. Considering all this, the tales that Putin is declaring another pseudo-ceasefire on May 9th and is ready to stop the invasion at the current front line only bring a bitter smile. Meanwhile, preparations for the advance of the Russian world are already underway in Estonia. They will build a new military base, right, at the border with Russia in the city of Narva. All the details in our report.
Ukrainian Special Operations Forces eliminated a platoon of North Korean soldiers in close combat in the Kursk region. This event took place last month. However, for security reasons, our military can only talk about it now. Neutralized with no chance of recovery. In the north, border guards turned an enemy radar station to ashes with FPV drone strikes. -10 near Volchansk, the Guard Brigade border guards delivered precise strikes on enemy positions. Dozens of occupiers and communication antennas were destroyed. Gradually, the losses of the occupiers in the war against Ukraine are approaching 1 million. In the last day, the Russian army lost 1,060 soldiers and 5 armored combat vehicles, 3 tanks, and nearly 50 Lux artillery systems at the front.
This process involves the mass destruction of Russian servicemen by the Russian military command, and it could stretch on indefinitely. The tactics used are from the Second World War, the so-called Zhukov style. That is, using numerical superiority as the main component to achieve both tactical and strategic goals.
But despite the fact that the Russians have already significantly mobilized for the war, there are not enough people at the front. Apti Alaudinov, a well-known military failure, suggested to Putin to draft another 1 million people for slaughter.
The European states, with their 2 boats, 3 motorcycles, and 2 bicycles, trying to threaten us, would immediately back down.
But it seems that even the Kremlin dictator is no longer listening to this nonsense.
Of course, if we had a resource of 1 million people at our disposal that we could deploy at any time, no one would dare to flaunt their bravado in front of us. They would all be eager to do anything just to prevent us from reaching them with that 1 million. That's my opinion. But for me, the opinion of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief is paramount, because it's his decision.
Despite colossal losses, the Russian army does not abandon the manic idea of reaching the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region.
The possibility of reaching the administrative borders of the Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions was reported as early as January. A notoriously known German journalist, Julian Röpke, reported sensational details at the time, estimating that there were only 6 to 7 kilometers left to the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region. As of now, the end of April, and as we can see, these kilometers have become a thorn in the side for the Russians.
Not calming down in any way, everything indicates that the occupiers are preparing for another offensive at the administrative border of the Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk regions, reports the Ukrainian tactical group Ugledar.
Currently, the Ukrainian Defense Forces are conducting a series of stabilization measures in the Pokrovsk direction on both flanks, effectively nullifying the possibility of an operational encirclement of the Ukrainian group and practically eliminating the issue of a breakthrough by Russian occupation forces directly to the borders of the Dnipropetrovsk region.
Against the backdrop of the Russian army's offensive actions, the information that Putin is ready to halt the full-scale invasion of Ukraine at the current front line, as part of efforts to reach a peace agreement with the head of the White House, Donald Trump appears as an outright bluff. After all, Trump's promises do not mean the end of the war and the killing of innocent people, and Ukraine is convinced of this every day.
Now, an analysis of the situation on the Novopavlovsk front of the Russian world. And here it continues to destroy, kill, and maim. On the Novopavlovsk front, our defenders repelled 12 enemy attacks in the areas of the settlements of Konstantinopol, Svobodnoy Pol, and towards Otradnoy, Bogatyr, and Shevchenko. One is battle. Engagement is still ongoing. The enemy also carried out airstrikes on the areas of the settlements of Zelenopol, Novopol, and Podobnoy. And now about the genocide of peaceful Ukrainians by Putin and all his associates. 2 adults and a 15-year-old girl were killed by Russians in Pavlograd in the Dnipropetrovsk region. Another 15 people were injured, including 3 children. The city was attacked by Shaheds, one of which hit a multi-story building. More about the consequences of this horror will be reported and shown by TSN correspondent Olga Pavlovska.
5 in the morning. A Shahed struck directly at a 5-story building. Many were still asleep.
At 5 in the morning, this started. 1 explosion, a second explosion, then a third. Then I hear smoke coming through the stairwell. I quickly put my backpack on and dashed out. The floor burned out. And
the floor and windows burned, but the flames weren't very strong yet. My son and I ran out. We made it, so thank God we're alive. Quite a few people ended up in a fiery trap. They say they prayed for the rescuers to make it in time.
We managed to run out into the corridor, and that's it. Everything was burning there, everything blew out. We stayed until the very end. Everything was burning there, plastic, everything, breathing the burnt air. We soaked ourselves with rags, towels, or whatever, with water like this to breathe. And then, a guy came in and put a mask on me.
10 people were rescued from the fire-engulfed building by rescuers. Among them were 2 children.
The firefighters took us down through the balcony here. The fire jammed the doors here, they were torn off.
The apartment. That became the epicenter of the explosion, was where a family of displaced persons from the Donetsk region had found shelter. 15-year-old Valeria died along with her father Alexei. The mother is in the hospital. Neighbors say the schoolgirl walked her dog here every morning, but today she didn't have the chance to go out.
I was tending to the flower bed, and she would take the dog out in the morning. And the direct hit, it shot right through. And they were lying here covered. She cried so terribly, saying, "My daughter helped me." But the daughter was already gone.
Good people, wonderful. They are displaced persons. They came, rented an apartment, and lived here.
In total, there are 15 injured. Among them are children, a 6-year-old boy and teenagers, aged 15 and 16. There are 5 victims in the hospitals. The medics say everyone is in stable condition.
Burns, carbon monoxide poisoning, such mechanical injuries. There are wounds, there are fractures. The condition is stable. There is no threat to life.
People say Second saved many. The very first attempts were to save the children.
I wanted to pick him up. I wanted to pick him up, but I couldn't. He was asleep. So I covered him with 3 blankets. And at that moment, all the glass fell on me. He had already woken up and was scared then. And we went to the corridor. He stood there while I frantically searched for my clothes.
A child from the first floor, a girl. She was crying so much. She was hysterical. She said, "Oh God, why is all this happening to us? Why are we being treated like this?" And she said, "Oh, my kitten is still there." The rescuers brought out the kitten, gave it to her, and she hugged the kitten tightly, calming down. And they write in their public forums, "We destroyed a military target." Well, here's the military target. A residential building.
There isn't a single apartment left intact in the building. Those that didn't burn down are either destroyed or flooded.
We were already dealing with water, I said, and now it's still leaking here. So much debris, we're shoveling it out, all the glass, everything, all the furniture is being thrown out because everything is shattered.
In addition to the building, the neighboring high-rises and the buildings of a civil organization are also damaged.
Now let's move to the Lyman and Siversk directions of the front. The bloody frenzy of the enemy armies continues here as well. In the Lyman direction today, the aggressor attacked 8 times in the areas of the settlements of Yekaterinovka, Novoy, Kolodyazy, and towards Novi Mir. Currently, 3 more clashes are ongoing. In the Siversk direction, the aggressor conducted 3 offensive actions towards the settlements of Rihorivka and Verkhnyo-Kamyanske. On the battlefield, the enemy is trying to encircle Ukrainian Kostyantinivka. The Phoenix drone units, together with artillery, are attempting to create a zone around Toretsk that the occupiers simply cannot cross. Details on how exactly this is happening can be seen in the exclusive report by TSN correspondent Andriy Tsaplienko.
The unmanned unit Phoenix, along with artillery, is trying to cut off a strip around Toretsk that the occupiers simply cannot cross. Phoenix has dozens of significant targets to its credit. A few weeks ago, a relatively cheap drone from the border guards burned a valuable Russian electronic warfare station, a vein that was blocking satellite communication. Probably this is the only way to disrupt the Kremlin's plan to encircle Kostyantinivka.
The complex work will primarily involve creating a kill zone, 15 kilometers. Where the enemy will be completely absent, we will be eliminating them. First and foremost, everything will be integrated. Using our drones, artillery, and aviation, everything will work in unison. But the main focus will be on drones.
However, the Russians are also trying to create similar zones on the approaches to their positions. In the Toretsk area, according to our data, this task is being carried out by the Russian Unmanned Systems Center Unit Rubicon, detailed information about which the occupiers are trying to keep secret. Russian drones are flying deep into the Ukrainian rear. The approaches to the defense line are littered with rusty skeletons of burned-out vehicles. The greatest danger is the fiber-optic drones, against which electronic warfare means are powerless. What to do? Find out where they are being launched from and monitor the battlefield 24/7, says the Phoenix aerial reconnaissance. Leleka, a Ukrainian-made drone, is one of the key elements of an entire fleet of aerial reconnaissance tools, used by the border guards. Without its wings, without its eyes, and most importantly, without these guys who analyze intelligence information, the Ukrainian defense would simply be blind and unable to see what is happening beyond the line of combat engagement. Route to the north from Toretsk. While preparing their plane, the guys heard the sound of another one above them. Do you hear the aerial drone? Yeah, it turned out to be ours, Ukrainian. But the air needs to be constantly monitored because enemy drones are already reaching here. The rapid flight control continues. And the stork rises into the sky.
There's a gun here, then another one somewhere around here. They are located in ordinary houses.
This crew discovered the position of a Russian anti-aircraft gun mounted on a tracked vehicle. Right here are the embankments. The embankments are good here. One position is here and another is here. But the stork can also become a target for the enemy. This aircraft has been shot at several times.
Well, how was the flight? Is it intact? Yes, everything is fine. But it was shot at, I heard. Let's take a closer look at it now.
It wasn't hit, so it can go back into the sky to ensure that the main force of the war, the infantry, feels more confident on the ground. No matter how advanced the technical means are, control over the territory is impossible until a soldier's boot steps on it. And the further the war goes, the harder it becomes to take a step forward on it. This is no longer Toretsk but Kharkiv region. However, both here and there, the situation for the infantry is practically the same.
The process itself, when you are moving towards the positions, is the hardest part.
These infantrymen heroically held their position for more than 2 months, but it took another 12 days to get them there.
And this can continue for several days because they will be waiting for an opportunity. As soon as you show yourself, that's it, they'll start targeting you. Fighter, they'll start targeting you guys.
Fighter. With the call sign Pliak, he has led the infantry into and out of the trenches over 100 times.
Yes, that's the hardest part. Drones are watching you 24/7. It feels like you're being hunted.
Recently, he was almost literally shot.
Drones were dropping petals on us.
Drones were dropping petals on us.
Since I was going first, I stepped on a mine. Thank God my leg is still intact.
Unfortunately, no robotic system can replace these people, the main workers of the war. If they are not in the trenches on the front line, then the Ukrainian land there will turn into a gray zone. This concerns everyone holding the front line over 1,000 kilometers long.
That's all for today. But very soon, Front News will bring you new, unique materials from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, gathered so you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.